Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Full-Time Whittle podcast. Today, I've got a very special guest. I'm so proud to be joined by the former Wigan Athletic chairman, David Sharpe. David, thank you so much for joining me today. It's much appreciated.
No worries, Jay. Good to speak to you. And also, like I said earlier, I've watched a couple of them already over the summer with Paul and Paul Cook and with Gary. And no, you're doing great stuff. So keep it going.
Thanks so much for that. And I'd like to start this podcast on a very positive note by congratulating you on Macclesfield. I knew I'd do that. Mansfield Town's excellent turn of form since the appointment of Nigel Clough. I know the result didn't go your way last night against Harrogate Town, but you're doing very well at the moment. I'd also like to say a happy 84th birthday to your granddad, because I know it was his birthday yesterday. How's he doing and what is he up to?
Yeah, I spoke to him yesterday. Obviously, with it being his birthday, so I gave him a quick phone call. And he's stare crazy like us all at the moment, staying at home because he likes to get out. But he's healthy as well, which is the main thing, especially at his age with the virus. And that's the main thing, is that he's healthy and well. So hopefully it remains that way. And I think he's going to Barbados for Christmas if he can, with my family. So yeah, no, he's good. Just obviously real shame watching on with the results and with what's going on at the club. But apart from that, he's really well. And as far as Mansfield's concerned, it's a big job. It's a real big job. It's very different to what I'm used to. Having been at the club that I grew up supporting for so long. So it feels like it feels like it's going to be a real challenge. But it's great getting a manager in of Nigel's caliber. So hopefully we can turn it around. But it's things don't happen overnight. It's going to be 2-3 years before we start seeing real positive signs, which I'm sure under Nigel and myself and the staff we've got, I think we'll do well. But it's a long process to get to where we want to be.
What are your long-term objectives under Mansfield Town?
Yeah, and I got brought in by John and Carolyn Radford in the summer, and they're very much of the belief they want to be a League One football club. They've put plenty of money into the football club in all areas, and to be fair, they've probably not got the success that their money has deserved, really. But you don't just get success by spending money. You have to spend it wisely and on the right things. And possibly that's why I've been brought in to help guide them in that area. It is a big challenge. You don't just get to League One by just spending a load of money and telling people you're going to get to League One. But I didn't join the football club just to stay in League Two for 5 years. I want to be part of a successful football club, which is why I took the challenge on. If they were happy just to fight relegation in League Two every year, I wouldn't have done it, and I didn't need to do it. So it's a great challenge for me, and hopefully I can be part of another promotion. If that's when that is, I don't know. Hopefully it will be in the not too distant future. Because I've been involved with Wigan, and the feeling is incredible. And to do another football club away from Wigan, and be part of that with a successful staff and team would mean a lot to me.
It's a great project, and I wish you all the best in that. I'm sure that with your experience in League One and across the Football League, as well as with your work as a football agent too, you're in a really good position to help Mansfield Town and take them to the next level. And now to talk about Wigan Athletic, it's a club that you've known all your life. It's something that's really special to you. During the Whelan family's proud reign at Wigan Athletic, your family was able to help the town and the supporters fulfil some of their wildest of dreams. The 23 years consisted of so many happy memories, including an 8-year spell in the Premier League, 5 promotions, 7 trophies, an FA Cup win, a European tour, and a top-selling hit in the iTunes charts. I mean, that is such a special list, and you was a massive part in a lot of these achievements. And unfortunately, in the last few months, since July, the amazing work of the last 2 decades have sadly been undone. As Wigan Athletic entered the shock administration in July, the Latics have been relegated to the Championship since July, have lost a swath of the players, are currently managerless, and currently sit bottom of the League One table. I'd like to apologise for reminding the fans of that, but it's the bleak reality of what we face. And first and foremost, David, how much does the current situation at Wigan Athletic hurt you? And were your family aware of what was happening at the time?
No, we found out at the same time as all the supporters, really, when the news broke. And you go through a range of emotions, from being angry to sad to then you're sort of hopeful that, right, hopefully a new owner comes in, but ultimately, yeah, it's to see the position that the club's in now with the squad and the situation. It is sad. It's very sad. It hurts us, considering. I mean, my granddad really. I can't take any credit for anything. It was all my granddad. From what he built, he bought the club in '95 when we were League Two, Division Three. I think they used to call it back then. And you just wheeled off what we achieved under my granddad for a club. It's similar to now to the position I'm in with Mansfield. It's almost like Mansfield going on to achieve Premier League football and European football and FA Cup football. They're similar sized towns, and it's just incredible when you look back. I think people only realise when somebody's left how good they actually are. And they say that with managers, they say that with players, they say it with sort of ex-legends of the game that unfortunately pass away. Then they start talking about actually how good they were. I think people are now starting to realise people always, I'm sure, realise how good my granddad was and what he achieved, but it now hits home even more seeing the situation that the club's in. To think only 7 years ago we won the cup. Only 2 years ago we sort of left the club. We sold it when we were mid-table in the Championship with players like Reece James on loan, who's now playing for England, and Nick Powell, Anthony Robinson. 10 years ago we were in the Premier League, 7 years ago in Europe. So it is incredible what he achieved, and to see what has happened in such a short space of time is devastating. To be honest with you, it's devastating. I've become a bit null to it all. I don't even enjoy looking at the starting 11 anymore. I used to obviously always want to know the team and see who's playing, and now every time I go on live score before a game, I don't want to check Wigan's team, because it does hurt me to see that the boys, it's not the boys' fault. They're just doing a job, and the lads are doing great. The academy boys are doing great, but it hurts me to see what we were and what we now are. It is painful, to be honest with you.
How does your granddad feel about what's happened since he sold the club? Because obviously, I can imagine it was really tough for him, because it's almost his baby, so to speak, with a football club.
Yeah, again, you go through a different range of emotions, and at first you can't believe it when we heard it. Then you start to boil up and get very angry, and he was the same. He couldn't get his head around it. Even now, when I speak to him, he asks me all the time, "Have you heard any news? Have you heard any news?" And there's not really much I can give him at the moment, because I'm out the loop. I don't hear too much about it. It's nothing to do with me anymore. I'm just watching on from afar like a fan would. And there's no real update to give him, and it's such a shame. Even on Saturday, I spoke to him because Mansfield didn't have a game because we played on a Friday night, and I was on the phone when the scores were coming in and we were 2-0 down to Oxford, and it's just so painful. It's so painful watching on and knowing that you can't really affect it. We can't help. We would have loved to have helped, but we just can't. So it's so devastating to watch on, and to rebuild it to back to where it was, I don't think that will ever happen. But just to stabilise the club and make sure that we're on a sound footing financially, whether we're in League One or League Two. It looks like League Two is a possibility right now, and that looks like it's staring the club in the face. But as long as the club survives and actually has a good owner who doesn't just splash the cash on things they don't need to spend it on, and keeps the club in a sustainable position, then at least we'll be happy. Yes, it will never be the same football club again, probably. Well, you never say never, but to start saying about Premier League again would be ludicrous right now.
I completely agree with you. And during the administration process, Dave Whelan said he would do all he could to help. Some people read this as he would put a bid in to buy the club. Was there any consideration about putting a bid in?
No, well, to be honest, with the lockdown and with coronavirus, with our family business, which is gyms, has been tough, to be honest with, for my family. It's the gyms have been forced to close, and we've lost obviously members, so it's the business wasn't in a great position, and we're sort of trying to come out the other side of it, hopefully next year with the vaccine and everything's back to normal to a degree. So we couldn't really go any further with it financially. We always felt we could help by advising people, helping out, helping the board, helping the chairman, helping the new owner, because we do know that club better than anybody. We know it, how a fan would know it. We know what works, we know what doesn't work. But from a financial point of view, we've been in a tough place with how coronavirus has hurt us this year.
Thank you for your honesty. And have you been in contact with some of the staff members or directors during this period? Because during your time as chairman, you seem like you were really close with everyone, which I've never really seen before. You had a great relationship with the staff, the fans, the players from afar.
Yeah, no, there's been a lot of staff leave, which is so sad. Good staff that were part of our family, really, our extended family, that had been at the club for 10, 15 years. People like Julie Lavin that's left the club, that has been a huge part of Wigan Athletic for so many years, and to see people like that leave is devastating. So I speak to them and all. I was on the phone to Ash from the media department a couple of nights ago. I was on the phone to Jonathan. I speak to Liam every now and then. There's a lot of staff left from my time. Nick Meese I think he went today, possibly. Andy Proc's gone. A lot of the players have changed. So Gregor's still there. So I try and keep in touch with all of them, but I want to give them space at the same time, but I also want to try and put an arm around them and be with them. But it's tough because there's not many there. Even Jonathan's not employed by the football club technically. He's trying to do his bit to make. He's doing all he can. He's been top drawer, to be fair to him. He's trying to do all he can to make sure the club survives this and gets back on an even keel again. And he should be a part of that moving forwards. He should be a massive part of that moving forwards. He should, as far as I'm concerned, he should be at the football club for a very long time. So yeah, I do speak with them. They're great people, but like I said, there's not loads of them left that I had while I was there.
It is a real shame to see. Obviously, there were 75 people made redundant when it was officially announced, and it's so awful to see someone lose their jobs, especially in a pandemic. You've seen yourself with the Whelan family's businesses of the gyms, and it's not great to see for anyone. And given what's happened over the last few months, I presume you feel quite let down by the Hong Kong-based owners, because obviously what's transpired.
Yeah, I suppose when we were selling the football club, you never know what they're going to do. It's like when you sell your house, you don't know if they're going to change the living room into a bedroom. You just don't know. So they can say all the right things and they can do all the right things, but as soon as you leave that building and as soon as you've gone, ultimately it's out of your control. So, of course, it's what has happened has been horrendous. There's obviously been a lot of money spent on things that really, realistically, were we going to get into the playoffs, into the championship? I mean, if we would have kept the team together, that finished 13th, because they did finish 13th. I'm not going to talk about the minus points, because the team and Paul did a great job finishing where they did in the league. Probably still would have lost Robinson in the summer if a team like Fulham, who are in the Premier League, come in for him. Probably would have lost a couple of other players. Then Norwich and Watford are coming down with ridiculously heavy squads, and Bournemouth. So you're trying to compete with those big boys half-heartedly. I would much rather finish 20th and than 13th personally, but not lose 20 million quid in a year. That's the way I would look at it. Whether people would say that's a lack of ambition, but there's no financial gain for finishing 13th or 12th or 10th compared to 20th. It's the same. Ultimately, your wage bill is just a hell of a lot higher. So that's, and possibly the models to follow would be Luton, would be Rotherham. That's where I felt probably Wigan should be, and where I felt we should go. When we sold it, the ambition was to try and get to the Premier League with the new owners and Darren and Joe. you've got to spend a hell of a lot of money doing that. And then if your ambition is to do that and you sign League One players, Kiefer Moore, he was great, but he was a League One player. Jamal Lowe, again, decent enough, but he was a League One player. You're not going to hit the heights of what those big boys are spending 25 grand, 30 grand a week on players. So you're just doing it with all the right intentions, but in the end, it costs you fortunes to finish in a position where I would have much rather have just finished 20th or 21st or even gone down and kept the club on a level footing to a degree with players that we could sell and just float between the leagues. That's the way I saw it, to be honest with you.
So some great points, and I'd agree as well in terms of, although I think Wigan would have had a better chance of reaching the playoffs if they maybe didn't concede so many late goals in the first half of the season, because it seemed like every week they was conceding a late goal. I think the Derby County game stands out to me the most because it was a 0-0 game all over. It's a 0-0 game 9 out of 10 times, and Andrew Shinney scored off his shin. So it was that kind of game. And while no one could have predicted this would have happened to Wigan Athletic, when you look back at the sale of the club in hindsight, was there any warning signs, or did you hear anything that made you concerned?
No, I mean I would have liked to have been involved because of I felt like I knew the football club very well, but at the same time, I don't think my ambition would have been aligned with their ambition. I think maybe I would have been pessimistic about things because you don't want to spend fortunes and put the club in a position where you could be losing. I mean, the results won't be published. The financial results won't be published because we ended up in administration. But they're probably close to losing 20 million a year, which is staggering, to be honest with you. So I don't think I think it would have been difficult for me. I would have struggled with certain decisions. I wouldn't have agreed with decisions in the end, but you can become a bit of a stumbling block for them and in the way, and you don't want to become a bit poisonous about them. You just want to let them do it. So that's what I did. But were the warning signs there? I don't know. Like I said, when you sell a house, you don't know what they're going to do to it. We were selling our club that we owned for 23 years with all the best intentions. It's tough because when you want to be ambitious and you want to say we'll get to the Premier League, but I mean, you just look through the Championship squads at the moment. Look at Nottingham Forest. Look what they're spending on their squad. It's staggering. Reading, I think, posted a loss of 38 million one season. You're competing with clubs and owners that at the end of the day are just wealthier, and you can't compete with them. So I quite like the model of Rotherham, of Luton. I think they do it right. I don't think they spend above the means. If they stay up, great. If they go down, they're normally top six in League One. So that's where I was at with it. Again, people will say it's a lack of ambition, but it's probably realistic if I'm being honest.
I think that's the best approach to be, because football, unfortunately, nowadays, with how it's more commercial and business minded, it's a case of power play. Who's got the most money? It's kind of a bit like a secret of, oh, my dad's richer than your dad. It's quite a weird concept now. And when the club was sold to the IEC in November 2018, were there any other interested parties? And if so, what made you choose the IEC?
No, there wasn't a long queue. To be honest with you, my family wanted to sell, but there wasn't a long queue. So it was a difficult one because you love to be very selective on who buys it, but like I said, they were the only bidder, and my family wanted to sell, and it's not just me and my granddad. There's more to our family than me and my granddad. So we had to do a job. I had to sell the club, and the deal got done. It took a while to get done, but in the end it happened, and everything seemed fine for the first how many months, and managed to stay in the Championship. I think we sold it in November 18, and we were about mid-table. Struggled a bit for 2 months, but then seemed to pick up towards the end. So we looked more than comfortable in the pool. I think we got above, I'm not sure what points we finished on that season, but 50 something. It might have been 50 exactly. You might know, Jay, but we looked fairly comfortable. I then again had a summer of spending on players. A lot of players got brought in, and then only. I mean, we were doing great in the league, especially towards it. Well, not early part of the season. I think I remember watching a game on Eiffel. I think we were playing Luton, and we got beat 3-2 or 2-1.
2-1.
A late 2-1, a late goal, and that was a real low point. But then Paul turned it around after that, and from sort of that game onwards, we really picked up the form. And then, especially in lockdown, when it was behind closed doors, the form was great. And then the news came, but even after the news came, we beat Hull 8-0, and like fair play to the staff and the players. They kept going, and they were so close to pulling off a miracle. But yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it wasn't when my family wanted to sell, which was in 2018, and there wasn't a big queue, and we got the deal done, and everything was fine up until earlier this summer.
How was the club initially approached by the IEC, and what role did Darren Royal play in negotiations?
Yeah, through Darren. I didn't know IEC. Darren knew them. So Darren and Gary Cook. I can't really say too much on the matter because it's obviously it's private information. But that it was Darren and Gary, and then Joe as well. After the deal got done, he was brought in as a director. But yeah, it wasn't. There was nobody else really to it apart from Gary, Darren, and IEC.
Are you able to disclose what business plans had been promises to be carried out by the IEC?
No, I can't go. We wanted to see obviously proof of funding, which we saw, and the EFL as well. So it was well, everything looked fine. Everything looked fine on paper, and the money was put into the football club. The money kept coming every month because, believe me, you don't. Nobody makes money out of football clubs outside the Premier League. We, my family, were putting in a significant amount every month to keep it going. So as soon as we sold, I knew they had to put in money every month, and the staff were being paid, the players were being paid, so they were putting the money in. So yeah, it's the business plans. It's hard to make a business plan in football. I always said it's when people used to ask me what's our forecast. I mean, you can only forecast to a degree because promotion, relegation, player sales, it's so hard to forecast. But their aim was to get to the Premier League, and that was the ambition. And unfortunately, obviously, what's happened has happened.
In reflection, do you believe that could have been a little bit naive in a way, with obviously the amount of money that's now involved in football?
Yeah, it's getting to the Premier League. It's easy to say it. When you've got to do it, it's a lot harder. So that's why I think my ambition wasn't aligned with theirs. I was probably a bit too realistic or pessimistic. It's so tough to get to the Premier League. And then the one season you miss out, you have to be prepared to go again and again and again. And then you're 100 million quid down before you know it. So I always saw just the club. I think our recent history of being in the Premier League and winning a trophy and being in Europe has probably changed the perception of Wigan Athletic as a club. In reality, like we all know, Wigan Athletic, we've got 6,000-7,000 season ticket holders at best. We're not a huge football club compared to the likes of Leeds United, who were in the Championship, of Forest, of Aston Villa. They were all in the Championship at one point with us. We're not a huge football club at all. So where are we as a club, as a fan base? If you remove the history of the last 15 years, since sort of my granddad's successful days, we're probably a League One club, aren't we? In effect, that's probably where we are. So that's how I saw it. I think people probably say that's considering. It's hard to say that considering, well, only 7 years ago you were winning the FA Cup and you're in the Premier League, and now you're saying you're a League One club. So that probably doesn't sit right with people. But that's just a realistic view on things. Like I keep saying, I feel we should have Wigan Athletic moving forwards, and hopefully this is the case now. I would hate the case that an owner comes in and starts talking about the Premier League. That's really got to be forgotten about now. We're a League One, potentially a League Two club next season if things don't improve. So that's where we are. The past is great. We loved it. It was a hell of a journey. It will give us memories that will live with us forever. And we've got photos on our wall. Every football fan will have that Ben Watson photo. But we've got to fix it of where it is now. And we've got to realise where we are now. And that is competing with the likes of Port Vale, with the likes of Oxford, with Portsmouth in League One, who are probably going to be a bigger club than Wigan in League One. A much bigger club, Sunderland. So that's where we are, and we've got to face it. We can't keep living in the past. So I'd love a new owner to come in and just say we want to be sustainable, but also be ambitious at the same time. How that ambition looks like, I hope it's we want to be at the right end of League One. I don't want them to start talking about being at that right end of the Championship and being in the Premier League unless they're a multi-billionaire, then they can get away with saying that.
I think that's a really honest answer, and I'd actually agree with that. I think Wigan are probably a League One club when you look at the finances, the fan base, and the size, because we've had so many great achievements over the years, and a large part of that, a significant part, is because of the Whelan family. And when the Wigan Athletic takeover was officially completed in November 2018, it ended the 23 reign at the DW Stadium, and you obviously subsequently stepped down as chairman on the 2nd of November. I know you mentioned earlier in the interview that you didn't get the opportunity to stay on, but how did it feel to step down as chairman in November 2018?
Yeah, I was probably caught up in a different range of it. I was sad, but I was proud at the same time. I was proud of everything that I'd achieved personally in a short space of time. For people that, I mean, when I first took over from my granddad, I was 23, and people looked at my age and laughed and didn't think I knew anything about football and what would he do. And I saw it all on Twitter and I thought, right, well, I wanted to prove those people wrong. So being part of a club that won promotion straight away from League One under Gary was great, and Gary was great that season. The players were great, and I'm just a tiny part of it. I just watch on, but ultimately, it shut the people up that were questioning me from afar. I think that wasn't the Wigan fans, because I think they knew that they were great with me. I think it was the football people from afar just looking at it, and I can see why they were saying that, because it is very unusual for a 23-year-old to be running a football club. But then to the season, the Championship, that hurt me. That was a poor season. A lot of things went wrong. I reflected on it myself at the end of the season, what I could have done better, what decisions I got right, what decisions I got wrong. I then addressed it. I went away for 4 weeks, and you would remember when Warren Joyce was sacked, we didn't have a manager. I put Graham in charge for quite a while, so I had 3 or 4 months just reflecting on it. I then came to the conclusion that what I wanted to put in place moving forwards, and we made a lot of changes that summer, wasn't just a manager change or a player change. It was a lot behind the scenes as well, and I felt the club needed to get into the modern times a bit more, into the 21st century, and we did that. And Paul was brought in and was probably the perfect appointment for where we were as a club. He'd won League Two with Portsmouth. He'd done it with Chesterfield. He knew the lower leagues. He knew what I felt needed to be put in place at Wigan. But he also wanted to be a Championship manager, and he felt that taking Wigan up would be his best chance of being his Championship manager. So that season was my personal favourite, because we we got to the FA Cup quarter final. We beat Man City, and we romped the league, really, didn't we? It was pretty straightforward when you look back on it now. When you see these clubs struggling, like Sunderland, to big, huge football clubs to get out of League One, Paul and the players were unreal that year. So yeah, from my point of view, I was very proud of my time. It felt like it went so quickly. It was only a few years. I think it was 4 years, 3 years. I felt like I had more to give. Was I 27 when I stood down? So still only very young, still only young now, 29. So I felt like I had more to give at the football club, but at the same time, I didn't want to get in the way of other people. So it was good. The timing was right. But then to see it how things unfolded, it was great for the first season watching on. But then the second season, or the latter part of the second season, was obviously very tough.
It's a great answer there. And obviously the season in League One, that was a record-breaking year. I remember the 7-0 game at Oxford United, the AFC Wimbledon win the game before. And I'd also like to say as well, I never used to understand the criticism, because I know a lot of outside football fans used to comment on your age, saying, oh, he's only 23, how can a 23-year-old run a football club? But in my opinion, you grew up at Wigan Athletic, you've always been shown the ropes, and for me, because you've always had that experience in football, there's no difference if a businessman who's had 60 years experience in making rubber ducks, for example, comes into a football club. I've maybe not used a rubber duck example, but it's the same score. He has no experience in football, so how can you criticise someone for their age when you've had that upbringing? And when you was young, how did your granddad initially show you the ropes and help you as you grew up from a young lad walking out with Roberto Martinez as a mascot to leading the operations at the DW Stadium?
Yeah, I think my granddad, what did he teach me? I mean, he's a typical businessman. He's very ruthless. So that's the first thing, being ruthless. And I think you can't be soft in the position you're in. You've got to be very stern, and also be clear in your mind. And that the most important decision you can ever make at a football club as the chairman is what manager you appoint. And if the manager needs to be sacked, you have to sack him. You can't shy away from that. So my granddads were very, I'd say old school, because he is quite old school. When it comes to football, he just thinks it should be a manager, a chief scout, and that's the setup. I will learn a lot from Roberto and from Uwe Rosler and Jonathan mainly. They were the sort of three that I learned a lot from initially, about how the football club should be run moving forwards and being a modern football club. Matt Jackson as well. Matt was one that I learned a hell of a lot from. He was very good. Him and Jonathan were very good. Really understood it. So I learned a lot from all four of those guys. And ultimately, you have to lean on people around you, good people around you, which I had. But the decision is always your decision. The final decision, and that comes down to when you sign a player, when you sign a manager, when you sack a manager, when you sell a player. It's always the one they're looking for you for an answer. So you can speak to as many good people around you, but it all comes down to you at the end of the day. So I think being clear in my beliefs and knowing what I wanted, and that's when obviously Gary was appointed. I knew how he worked, I knew how good he was. And that's I don't think from the outside, would other people have appointed Gary? I'm not too sure, because he's not got a track record of being a manager. He had no CV of being a manager. But I felt with not just my gut, but with my head as well, that he was the perfect man for our club at that moment in time, with the style of play, with his understanding of the club. It would have been a lot easier to go for a manager that had 20 years experience and had won League One or won League Two and knew the lower leagues very well. But I took a bit of a punt and stick to my beliefs, and it paid off. It paid off in that first season with the promotion. And I'm just really sort of unfortunate, sorry to see how Gary's career, because he is so much better than what he's doing right now, which is waiting for a job. He's a very, very good manager / head coach. The players think he's one of the best in terms of when it comes to training sessions. Tactically, he's spot on. So I just wish, and I'm sure he wishes, listen, I've said this before, did I sack him too early? Yes, I did. Would results have changed? I don't know. So it still may have come down to that. But his next job after Wigan, I just wish he would have, I don't know, everything's great in hindsight, but Chesterfield as a club, look where they are now. He potentially should have waited for a better job than that, and we'd be in a different place right now. But that's part and parcel of football. You make bad decisions, you make good decisions. And then Paul after that. Well, it wasn't Paul after that. It was Warren Joyce after that. But I don't want to speak about that. That was yeah. I moved on from that one. I got that one wrong. And then Paul. Yeah, I think I got that one right. So if you can get 2 out of 3 right, you take that.
I think you made some really interesting points about Gary Caldwell. And one thing I'd like to actually ask you is, when Gary Caldwell, you said on record quite a lot of times that it was one of your biggest regrets to sack him. But do you regret sacking him, or was your regret not finding the right replacement? Because I imagine it could have been a different story if Warren Joyce was a blazing success and won the league title, or obviously pushed us towards the right end of the championship table.
Yeah, the shortlist, the managers that were out of work and the managers on the list at the time when Gary left really wasn't anything to write home about, to be honest with you. So it was quite a tough one. Now I always believe, and this isn't disrespectful to the current manager, because he could leave, another club could come in for him tomorrow. Gary, Celtic could have come in for Gary in the summer. You always have to know your next man, or have a shortlist or have an idea. That's just like when you've got centre forward that's in demand. You should have your scouts watching plenty of centre forwards to know which is the next one you want to go for. So I don't, at the time when I look back on it, there wasn't the perfect candidate to follow Gary. We thought Warren Joyce, with the way we wanted to go down with development and academy, was the right man for that. That's why we put him in the first place, because I revert back to it before, but talking about the models of Rotherham, etc. That's why I felt we were where we'd be moving forward. We'd have to produce academy players, because I knew how good the academy was, and you've only seen in probably the last year the likes of Geldart and Jensen Weir. I knew those players were on the verge, so that's why I felt a manager like Warren Joyce, that was used to working with development players, would be a perfect candidate and would be the perfect man. I knew pretty early on it wasn't going to work. So ultimately that's why I made the decision early. I think it was only 3 months, 4 months possibly. So it was the wrong move. Probably listened to wrong people around me. Not around me, but people that were looking out for Warren more than looking out for me. But that's been and gone, and we left on good, fine terms. Shook hands with him. It's part and parcel of football. You can't be bitter. There's no point burning bridges with people. It's life's too short for that. So I just realised that, right, this next one has to be right, and that's why I took my time, and why I was sort of waiting. I met plenty of out of work managers. It wasn't just Paul that we met, because he was still in the job, and he had to finish the season with Portsmouth. We didn't know if they might be in the playoffs, but then they ended up not being in the playoffs, and they won the league. So the timing was good that it allowed me to wait, because I did meet a few out of work managers, and it's you can always learn from them, even if you don't think they'll get the job. There's always bits you can pick up on them from and get information and keep in touch with them in the future. So, but then when it came to it, and Paul was the one we wanted to go for, we quickly agreed compensation with Portsmouth, and straight away and I clicked with him. He was very good. We got on great. I was in Mallorca. I think he flew from Portugal to Mallorca to meet me, and I spent the day with him, and more or less agreed everything, and it was all done. And he gave us a hell of a season. He gave me a hell of a time. So I can't thank him enough, and I hope he gets a job in the Championship soon, which he deserves.
Paul Cook was a great manager, and I know he became quite a close friend with yourself, because I know you went to the Ed Sheeran concert, I believe, with him a couple of years ago, which I can't really imagine that, to be honest. Paul Cook at an Ed Sheeran concert. Was he with his glow sticks and singing along?
Yeah, no, I think me and him spent more time at the bar getting pints than we did watching Ed. But my missus and his missus have certainly enjoyed it, and we, it was. But no, Cookie's a great guy. He's the life and soul of the place. As soon as you're in his company, if you're having a bad day, he lifts you up. I loved going down to the manager's office after a game and talking about everything from our game to all those different scores that are coming in. I'd be sat in his office in the stadium for hours, and with his staff, with his family. The chemistry between them all. You can't beat those guys. They're top class, and you see now Anthony Barry at Chelsea, first team coach. We always knew he was going to be very good, and the fact he's now at Chelsea, Champions League last night. I mean, he's fair play to him, because he has gone on to great things, and he will continue to go on to great things.
I imagine it was a massive boost for Reece James as well, having worked with Anthony when he was at Wigan and helping him develop. So now I'm at Chelsea too, to continue that development. I'm sure Reece James will continue to perform for club and country. And before you became chairman at the football club, the first major project you probably launched was Sharpie Chippy. How do you reflect back on running Sharpie Chippy? And knowing what you know now, would you run it differently?
That was my granddad's idea. I always get labelled at this just because it was called Sharpie's Chip. That was my granddad wanted to have the biggest and best chippy in the whole of the Northwest. And being honest, I've not grown up wanting to run a fish and chip restaurant. To be honest with you, I kept saying to him, "Just let me run the football club." But at the time, he was like, "No, I'm not having you in the football club. I've got a plot down there. Used to be a gym. I think we should do a restaurant. It'd be great on match days." And we were in the Premier League at the time, so we thought, yeah, it would sell out on a match day. Would do plenty, but during the week there was no traffic. There's no traffic that goes by there Monday to Friday. And there's only one game every other week when you're in the Premier League, because it's normally Saturday and then away the following Saturday. So I was a bit sort of, we'll do great on a match day, but during the week, how will we do? Because it's not really in the middle of a town; it's out of the way. People have to drive. So, but I can't say I was nothing to do with it, because it was under my name and I ran it. And but it was a tough gig. It was tough to get people in. During the week, especially. It was fine on match days, but it also coincided with the club going down as well to the Championship, so the timing wasn't perfect. But yeah, that was an experience. I certainly put on a bit of weight, but it wasn't something that I'd grown up wanting to do, run a fish and chip restaurant. But it allowed me, I suppose, to be close to the stadium and get to know the guys at the stadium better, and Jonathan and people like that. And soon after that, I was put involved in the football club, and working under, well, who was the manager? Uwe Rosler. We were my first real, when I knew, right, my granddad starting to involve me now, was when we were 3-0 down to Derby at half time, and me and my brother always would sit on a different table to the directors, and he came and sat over us at half time and said, "This manager, what do you think?" And that was the decision made at half time. So that was when I started to think, right, he might start involving me now. And then when Uwe came in, Uwe was the one I suggested we appoint, and I worked with Uwe after he came in, and the recruitment stuff, and that was really my first real involvement in the club then.
When you initially became chairman at 23, did you have to convince Dave Whelan to let you become chairman, or was it always a natural progression for you to get to that point?
No, not at. I wasn't expecting it. It was after Malky, and he got in trouble with the FA and different things, and he became a bit disillusioned with it all, and he did, and it was just, I was just at home, and then he was in Barbados, and I got a phone call because he got banned from football, and I got a phone call saying, right, I'm flying back on Tuesday. I want you to run Wigan Athletic. I want you to be the chairman. I said, you're crazy. Like, I'm too young. You're the best. You're rated as one of the best chairmen in the country. Fans love you. You don't need to give this up over one. This will go away. And he was adamant. And I said, like, well, if you're that adamant, and I'm not going to turn it down, because I'd rather you not appoint an external chairman from outside the football club. I'd rather stay in the family. So it created a lot of headlines. It certainly created a lot of headlines and put the spotlight on us as a club and as me. But my first reaction was that I wanted my granddad to stay on. I didn't think the timing was right. But he was, like I said, he's one of the key things is when he makes his decision, he sticks to it, and that's what he did.
He was a great leader, and when you was chairman, how much pressure did you feel under from Dave Whelan? And was you ever pulled up with him from what he may have perceived as a mistake during your time as chairman?
Oh yeah, he wasn't shy. He didn't mix his words with me if he wasn't happy. It was. I remember one. Well, there was a couple of occasions. There was one we played at Accrington Stanley in the Checkatrade Trophy, and being honest, we just wanted to concentrate on the league and the FA Cup that year under Paul Cook, and we put a team out which was basically the kids, and we got beat 4-0 at home to Accrington Stanley, and my granddad went ballistic, and he said, he grabbed me and he said, if you want out of this, I don't mind because it's a nonsense trophy, but get beat bloody 1-0, not 4-0. So that's how he was. But yeah, he wouldn't mix his words with me if he wasn't happy, and he was entitled to give his opinion. It was his money. He owned the football club, and I had to listen to his opinion. He'd been the chairman of a football club. He ran a football club that had won the FA Cup, for God's sake, Wigan Athletic. So you've got to listen to him. So I did, and I always tried to give my side to it and my opinion, and he would listen, and we'd have a good discussion. And but he was no, he was only probably after the season. I mean, when Gary left and he started to sort of, when Paul came in, he started to stand off a lot more. Only then he started to stand off a lot more. But he was great to have alongside me. He was, and he'd be. I'm sure he'd be proud watching on the team that it's 2 more trophies that we didn't have before. He stood down, and I know his trophies and a championship promotion and an FA Cup are better than League One trophies, but they're still great trophies to have and be part of. So it was he was the reason I got the job in the first place, and I can't thank him. I wouldn't be in this position at another football club in a job if it wasn't for him in the first place. So he's given me everything that I've got in life, given my family everything, and every day we're thankful to him. Yeah.
That's a brilliant thing to say. And when you're a football chairman, one thing that's always caught my attention is, how do you find the right balance of professionalism between being a fan of the club but also being a figure of authority? Because I imagine when you're at football games, you probably do want to watch it as a fan, but you have to look at it differently, say you're scouting or something like that, trying to get a bit of an insight into the opposition.
Yeah, quite tough. It is quite tough. I'm never not one. If we'd scored, I always celebrate. I never one just to sit down and not move. I do celebrate, and I do make reactions if I don't like certain things, just like any fan would. Like, get him. Like, I wouldn't shout at the top of my voice, but get him off or whatever. Or he's having a, like, that's having a go at the referee. That's just natural instinct. But the longer it goes on, and the longer I was in the job, you know it's a 46 game season, and you can't get too carried away. You can't get too high. You can't get too low. You always have to take things into perspective, especially when money comes into it. When I think our last game in charge, we're playing Leeds United. our wage bill compared to theirs. So you can't start comparing yourself and thinking that you should all be on a level playing field, because you're really not. Over time, you take things perspective. You know about certain things before the game, i.e. a player's carrying a certain injury, or he's feeling his hamstring and that's why he might have been having a bad day, or something's gone out at home. So you do know if there's reasons why things aren't going so well, which the average fan wouldn't know. Some things are kept private. So it's different, but at the end of the day, I was still a fan. I still reacted like a fan, and I still do, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I know there was a story back in, I think it was 2013, maybe a bit later, how you got told off in the Royal Box after the FA Cup final for celebrating too loud after you decided to score the 91st minute winner to win their first ever major trophy. So that's always a story that sticks out to me. And to reflect on your time as chairman now, a thing that always fascinates fans is transfers. So who would you say was your best signing at Wigan Athletic, if you can choose?
Well, from a financial point of view, Wildshut and Dan Burn made us a lot of money. Dan Burn we got on a free, and Wildshut we paid just shy of $1 million and sold for a lot of money. So then from a financial point of view, but from a Will Grigg from giving us for the amount of goals he scored, for the outlay, and in the end, well, the club made a profit on him. We paid $1 million for him, and I think they sold him. I think that January window, I think for 3, rising to 4 possibly. So he was still a good one financially, and also from the goals and the promotions. So I'd say definitely, Will Grigg from an emotional point of view and a fan's point of view, and also probably from a financial point of view, and Wildshut and Burn. I mean, to sign a player like Dan Burn on a free and get the money we did from him from a Premier League club, that's just good business. And why he ever got given away on a free is God knows. But there's also other players that, like Reece James on loan, and we were paying a fraction of his wages, and he's 2 years later, even a year later, he's sort of playing in the Premier League and now in the England squad. So I wouldn't normally consider a loan player as one of our best ones, but he's right up there.
Absolutely. And fans are always fascinated by potential transfers, the near misses. Can you talk about any notable players we tried to sign that didn't come off?
Yeah, Ollie Watkins was one we made a bid for. I was in. It was the January window. I was in Barbados for 4 or 5 days, and I was on the phone constantly to Jonathan trying to get it done in Exeter, held firm, and ended up doing the deal with Brentford. But he was one we were all over, because we knew we were selling Wildshut, because Derby and Norwich kept making offers, and he was the one we were going to do. But because the Wildshut deal dragged on till deadline day, we didn't quite. The timing wasn't quite right. So yeah, Watkins would have been one. Shea Adams would have been another one that Gary wasn't sure on, to be honest with you, and the recruitment department and the scouts were all over him. And I think we could have got him for $1 million or $1.5 million. And he ended up going to Birmingham, and after that got sold to Southampton for 15. So yeah, they're the two. There's loads though. There's loads, but it doesn't matter because you don't sign them. About every club in the country's got a sub story about this player they went for who's now worth 25 million.
I think the most recent example is Barnes at the moment in talks to sign Mero Balotelli. I mean, that'll be some signing, but I can hardly see that coming off. And on Twitter, I noticed that you follow the notorious football journalist Alan Nixon. As a chairman, do you ever read the transfer news and realise a player is available that you didn't realise and then make a move for them?
I wouldn't say that. I do follow a lot of journalists because information is key. I wouldn't say you ever pick up on players that are available and you make a move from just because a journalist has tweeted about him. But it certainly provides more information, knowing what other clubs, and normally Nixon gets it 90% spot on, to be fair to him. But normally knowing what other clubs are in for another player that we might be in for, that always helps. But you're relying on your recruitment department and your scouts to be well on top of everything, to be honest with you. a lot of the journalist stories are engineered by agents giving information out to try and drum up interest.
Yeah.
Alan Nixon gets it more or less spot on. So whereas other journalists just put anything out that any agent gives them, and a lot of the time it's so wide from the mark. But yeah, you've got to pick up on information. I love data, so there's a company called StatsBomb that I think Wigan would have been working with, that costs quite a bit of money, but they provide great data on players and on results. So I like to look at the data after a game, because if the game's 2-0 to us, when you look at expected goals and the data in that game, it might not have actually been a 2-0 type of game. It might have been more of a 0-0 or 1-0, and you've just got lucky. So over the course of the season, normally that evens itself out, and normally the data is accurate over the course of the season, and that always helps put things into perspective. So as much information from journalists, from data, it gives you so much.
In your time at both Wigan and Mansfield now, how involved are you in the player recruitment process? I know at Wigan it was reported that Roberto Martinez actually assisted in your reigning transfers. I think you signed, or you identified Gavin Massey at Ibiza. So it is quite an interesting process, because it's not really something that gets spoke about. Yeah,
no, the Gavin Massey one, but that was just, I was in Ibiza on holiday with Roberto, and Paul called me about Gavin Massey, saying I want him, he's on a free. Told me all about him. So Roberto had Y-Scout, which is what all the managers and scouts used to watch players, and he just pulled it up on his laptop around the pool, and we had a look of Gavin Massey. So that was all that was. That Roberto didn't recommend him. I don't think he'd ever heard of him, to be honest with you. So I don't get too. I get involved, of course, in the negotiations and in every recruitment meeting, but I don't like to force a player on a manager. I don't like to say you're signing him, even if you don't. That's not how it works. So you just you listen to their opinion, you give your opinion, and then I always just try and back the manager. Just make sure you back him if it's financially viable and the numbers stack up. The manager has to feel supported, but he needs good people around him, good scouts, which certainly Paul had. But they don't always understand the financial side to it. So that's where myself and Jonathan had to balance it.
I think that's a really great answer. And during your time as chairman at Wigan in particular, you seem very close to the players, the fans and the management team, a lot more than many other chairmen in the Football League. Did you feel that had any advantages and disadvantages?
Yeah, I tried. It's difficult because they are the same age of you. Some of them are older than you, and it's hard to keep your distance. My office was at the training ground, so I'm not just going to sit at home every day just to avoid them. So it's difficult. As time went on, I think initially I struggled with it because a lot of the players under Uwe and Malky, because I wasn't the chairman, I was just like a sort of member of staff. So you're naturally close to the players, and they would just call me Sharpie and be a pal of mine. But then when you become chairman, you have to have that level of respect and distance. But at the same time, still, we're all humans. Like we all close at the training ground. We all got on. So I didn't want to be this guy that was really standoffish. Like I still speak to them all now on text, on WhatsApp, and we are still all good friends at the end of the day. So it was a difficult balance, but I think we got it right. I think I got it right. Having Jonathan was there was a big help, because I would leave him to have a lot of the difficult conversations and the ones that you don't want to have. So that's my dog. No, the balance was fine, and the lads were great with me. The level of respect, and even now, speaking to Paul Cook, he still calls me chairman. So yeah, that's the players. The players don't anymore. They've likes of Greggy and that. He doesn't call me chairman anymore. It's just Sharpie. So.
Yeah, to sum up the podcast now, your time at chairman had a lot of highs, a lot more highs than lows. We spoke about some of your regrets, managerial appointments, but what do you rank as your greatest achievement, and what changes did you help oversee which you felt was successful?
Greatest achievement, yeah. I don't like to differentiate between the two promotions because they were both great. Gary had a real tough job changing the whole squad. Paul's job was probably he still had the likes of Nick Powell and Will Griggs, so it was a bit more settled. So both I'd put both on a par. I think a single moment that really stood out for me, probably on a maybe more, was beating Man City on that Monday night. Just the whole feeling around the club that night was incredible. So I'd say as a single moment that, and then the two promotions just as a combined, you can't. The promotion feeling is incredible. And the whole town comes together to enjoy it with the party in the park was one of my favourite days on that Sunday. I knew that I was going to be leaving the club in the not too distant future, so I really tried to enjoy the day and let my hair down. And days like that, days you really remember. I even still speak about with my missus now. We had such a good time. So, and what was the other question? What did I felt I changed?
Yeah, what changes did you oversee, and what did you feel was successful?
I mean, it was a lot of change. I mean, the academy was on the verge. When I first took over, Gregor was already in place, and a lot of the hard work had already been done. So I don't want to take any credit for that, but you have to be part of the process, I suppose. But Matt and Gregor and Jonathan had done a lot of the hard work towards getting the academy where it was, and that really, the academy has kept the club going through these tough times with certain players there, was like Joffy and Jensen Weir. So, and now the players that are playing in the team, being actually able to fill a team sheet with them. So that was moving to Exton was a massive part of that, because that allowed the academy to have Christopher Park. So that was a big change for us. And obviously it's awful to see Exton now in another club's hands. It's been through 3 clubs now: Bolton, Wigan, and Preston. So it must be a haunted training ground. But it was that was a good move for us at the time. And I'd say it's all irrelevant now, because the club needs to fix itself and have new people and put a new structure in. But it was really tough from being a relegated Premier League club. You've got people that have been there so long, and we had to transform the football club with a new structure, with new staff, and that just doesn't happen very easily. You see now with clubs that have been relegated from the Premier League, Sunderland, clubs that are still in the Championship, Stoke, that both go through so many managers, and it's such a tough thing to transition, and then especially going down to League One, it makes it even tougher. So I think to put a structure in place that was quite modern, that was people that hadn't been at the club for many years, that were new to the football club but hit the ground running as soon as they came in. So it was sort of Paul and the recruitment department then, and people like Nick Meese and Proc. They were great. They were a big part of the football club moving forwards from sort of the ex-Premier League mentality had gone, and would put a new mentality in place, and that worked very well.
Some really great achievements there. And a final question now is, are there any circumstances in which you'd like to return to the club one day?
You can never rule it out. I would, of course, I've got a job at Mansfield and I'm loving it, and I'm working with great owners. So that's my immediate priority. Of course, Wigan, I'll always look on, and I hope whoever comes in, whoever the new owner is, and if it gets sorted, that the club that they get back on a level footing. There's a good possibility that the club will go done before January, and significant money is not significant, but good deals are done in January to stabilise the team and try and pick up some results. So that is a reality, that the club may be in League Two next season, and we can't shy away from that. So I'll always be on the phone for advice. I'll always be there to sort of help in any way. Like I said, I just think the main thing is concentrating on knowing what we are now. Yes, enjoy the past, think about it, have the photos up, but that's been and gone. Don't start saying we want to get back to the Premier League and different things. Let's just concentrate on, let's try and stay in League One. If we don't stay in League One, let's try and be sustainable, be at the right end of League Two, and build. Because look at Bolton, it's easy done. Bolton are mid-table in League Two, so it can all be a slippery slope. So let's just get on an even footing, get the fans back in the stadium as soon as possible, and get some wins. Because that's ultimately, it doesn't matter who you're playing. If it's Carlisle or Man United, winning a game of football is what everybody enjoys. So I just hope I can see a few wins come soon.
I completely agree, and what a fantastic interview. Thank you so much for your time. Your insight's been absolutely excellent. You've given some great answers. You've been really honest as well about some of your regrets, and I'm sure the fans will really appreciate hearing from you. We wish you all the best at Mansfield Town. I always look out personally for the results to see how you're getting on, because there's a few ex-Wigan players there at the moment. Nicky Maynard, James Perch, just to name one or two, and let's hope we can see Mansfield Town push towards League One in the near future.
Cheers, Jay. Good to speak to you.
If you enjoyed this edition of the Full Time Little podcast with ex-Wigan Athletic chairman David Sharpe, please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks so much for watching.